Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and executive chairman of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast, and in turn, continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
Over a third of the U.S. does not have a primary care provider at all, and they are showing up at places like AFC to take care of urgent needs, but it's also, one of the few times that they're getting eyes on them from a nurse practitioner or a doctor to say, hey, what's going on, more broadly with their health.
Historically, urgent care clinics were places you only went to treat acute injuries. But as the healthcare landscape has shifted, people are turning to them for a growing slate of services, and that's creating a huge opportunity.
The white space for a couple thousand square foot retail health clinic is in the thousands.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Our guest today is Jeremy Morgan, CEO of American Family Care, the nation's leading provider of urgent care with 400-plus walk-in clinics across the United States. AFC's team of over 3,500 highly trained healthcare professionals deliver care to more than 4 million patients annually, driving system-wide sales exceeding $1 billion. Prior to joining AFC, Jeremy served as CEO of WellBiz Brands, the nation's premier franchisor of beauty and wellness franchise brands. His career also included significant roles at Smashburger and Tava Kitchen. Applying his vast experience in driving growth and fostering innovation in consumer-focused franchise organizations, Jeremy plays an instrumental role in supporting AFC's commitment to delivering fast, convenient, and high-quality healthcare to the communities it serves. Let's enter the arena with Jeremy Morgan. So obviously I read a little bit about your background. You have a ton of experience. When American Family Care kind of came to you, and that, how did that opportunity come to you? And what about it was like, hey, I'm going to go for this at this point in my career?
American Family Care was a really cool opportunity. I'd spent a lot of my career working with founder-owned consumer services businesses and bringing them into a private equity environment. American Family Care had been owned by Dr. Bruce Irwin, who founded it in the early 80s and sadly passed away. And his family sold part of the business to Lorient Capital.
Yep.
And so it was the first time for the business being owned by private equity. And it's an interesting model because it is a pretty hardcore healthcare with urgent care locations all over the country, but it's also a franchise model. And over 300 of the clinics around the country are franchised. And that's something I've spent the last 15 years of my career on, is in the franchise space. So I was really excited to take on a very mission-driven, healthcare-centric company, but also be able to leverage everything that I had learned and spent my time on over the last 15 years. The opportunity came together from our executive chair, who I had worked with previously at Smashburger, gave me a call and told me that they were looking to rebuild the leadership team. And I really jumped at the opportunity to both work with some folks I'd worked with in the past, but also take on a new challenge that was in a context of things that I had some pretty good experience on in the past.
Yeah, it's cool. And like urgent care doesn't strike me as like a franchised thing. I'd love to know who the franchises are typically. And then really, what's the core strategy? Now that you've kind of been under the hood for a while, you've seen everything, where do you see things going in a core way?
Overall, I think our secret sauce, as much as anything, is that the product and the patient experience is obviously healthcare.
Yep.
But the business model, by and large, is really multi-site consumer retail. So it's about having a great customer experience. It's about using digital marketing to drive patients into our clinics when they need us. It's about having great websites. It's about picking great real estate. It's about working with franchise owners to have great teams and service providers, all things that are pretty typical in a franchise model, actually, whether that be a restaurant or the fitness space.
Yeah.
So those things are pretty similar. The healthcare aspect of it, working with insurance companies on payments, collecting money from insurance, some of the compliance aspects of it, those were obviously new for me, but it lends itself to a great franchise model because those are things that a great franchisor can provide fantastic oversight on. But that local delivery model with a franchise owner that is in their market, knows their teams, knows their patients, they're in the community, is really a differentiator relative to other chains that are more corporate owned and owned by healthcare systems.
Yeah. Is the typical franchisee have a medical background, or is it really just someone who's well capitalized, a great business person who sees a great opportunity with a great brand?
We have both. It's probably about 2/3 to 3/4 are more of the well-capitalized business owner that then partners with a medical expert.
Yep.
But many are physicians, have gone to medical school and are looking to have their own business and looking for some help and support on the business services side of things, since that's not what they went to medical school for on the business side. So we have both. Our larger owners, the folks that own kind of 5, 10 clinics, tend to be more on the business side. Again, they typically partner with a local physician and have a local physician company that helps to make sure that all the medical needs are being met accordingly by the nurses and the providers in the clinics.
Yeah. And, there's obviously a lot of urgent care across the country. How do you differentiate yourselves, kind of going forward? I know that when you hear urgent care, you think, oh my God, I broke my leg, I'm going to go there. But there's a lot of other ways to differentiate, I would imagine, with the business model and kind of the direction that you're heading in.
Well, one of the things I'm just incredibly proud of to be a part of AFC's, our NPS scores are through the roof high.
Yeah.
They're in the mid 80s. It's not necessarily a good day for someone when they have to go to an urgent care. It usually means someone's sick or they're injured. But we do a really good job of being conveniently located, fairly priced, and getting people in and out in the care they need quite quickly. And going back to what I mentioned before, I think that being part of the community and that local delivery model with our franchise owners is a big, big part of our secret sauce. There's obviously, whether it be an emergency room, other urgent cares, primary care facilities, there's a lot of places for people to go when they're feeling under the weather. But we've really built a fantastic reputation of being a place that it's 7 days a week. You can get in pretty quickly. We take your insurance and, we can get you in and out of there and on with your day pretty quickly. And, and that extends beyond just simple flu tests or day-to-day physicals. We have x-ray machines in all of our clinics, so we can see if it's a sprained ankle or a broken ankle or what might have happened there. Yep. We do a lot of things with employers on helping them onboard their employees, whether that be with drug tests or ongoing physicals that they might have regulatory requirements for. And we work with local schools and other things on things like sports physicals for the kids that they need before football season or other things. So we've really built this reputation of being kind of a catch-all for the type of healthcare that comes up on a bit of a moment's notice that's not getting scheduled way out in advance. And, we think that that's going to be a big part of what continues to differentiate us. Being in these retail centers next to Starbucks, next to the local grocery stores where people are already going multiple times a week, we think is a real differentiator in the healthcare space.
Yeah. Jeremy, you joined what was essentially a family business after the founder passed. And what did you see and what were your top priorities once you kind of got in there and got to understand the business and how it was operating? What did you see and how did you kind of prioritize how you were going to professionalize things going forward?
Well, look, Dr. Irwin built a heck of a business.
Yeah.
It was almost 400 clinics already by the time that I've joined. We're kind of coming up on 450 or so today. And so, the reputation was there. It's a business that was still kind of coming off of the other side of COVID.
Yeah.
The urgent care business had the opposite of what many other retail businesses had. It was, among the busiest times in the history of urgent care, and it was hard in a different way. Look, I think that, several of the things that were top priorities going in is to just really make sure some of the core typical business metrics, P&Ls, KPI, scorecarding, how are we going to measure and look at this business and make sure we know how we're on track? And how are we going to take those things? We own and operate 80 clinics on our own and take what we know as kind of best in class and make sure that we're bringing those to our franchise owners in a way that lets them be successful as well. So we've really turned our attention to franchisee profitability, franchisee success, making sure that we are lockstep with them on picking the right type of real estate, that they're going to be great sites and make great financial sense, and take some of the services that we already do for our own clinics, whether that be revenue cycle management, which is just revenue collection from insurance companies, negotiating with insurance companies on the payer contracts we have, doing digital marketing and making sure that potential patients out there know how to find us, things that like work really, there's a real expertise on, that a team of experts can drive real value on. We've built out those teams to drive value across not just the clinics we own, but for the broader franchise portfolio. And then we're pivoting our attention to growth. We are among the largest retail healthcare businesses in the country. And, above and beyond the flu test or the ankle sprain of the moment, we think that there's a big opportunity to get into new services that people are looking for, that need convenience and in-person attention to be able to do them the right way.
Yeah, it's such a great idea. I'd be like a kid in a candy store if I were you, and there's so many opportunities. How do you prioritize kind of like organic growth at the store level or retail level with new market expansion? How do you think about the next few years and where you're going to focus the resources of the company into either of those?
I really divide it up into kind of three things. First is just run the business you have really well.
Yep.
And I think that we spent a lot of the first year that I was on board focusing our attention on that, making sure we're running great urgent cares and taking those best-in-class type of approaches out to our franchise owners. Then you want to really think about, how do I build top line and get new services in, drive the right kind of revenue into the clinics that we already have, and that gets to service innovation. It gets to making sure that we're maximizing our marketing to get the most patients in the door that are already out there looking for us. And then you really get to the unit count. How do you get more AFCs out in the world? And I'm just, given the NPS scores that we have in place, given just the quality of care that we provide in patients, I'm an evangelist for the idea that like the world deserves more AFC urgent cares out in the community. And how do we pick the right places, find the right type of franchise owner that have aligned values with us, and get some new clinics up and going that can serve those local communities where we're not already there. There's the white space for a couple thousand square foot retail health clinic is in the thousands. We have 400 clinics. We are the biggest in the industry with the number of clinics we have, but we have about 2.5% market share. So we view that there's a long runway for growth to bring AFC to communities around the country.
Yeah, where are you geographically right now?
So we are in about 30 states. Geographically, some of our biggest markets are in Alabama, which is where Dr. Irwin started the business.
Yep.
But Houston, Denver, Greater New Jersey, and Philadelphia, Boston, Tennessee, North Carolina, those are our biggest markets. But we have a great presence in places like California, Illinois,
Yep.
New York as well. So I sometimes use the phrase, it's a little bit of an electoral college map. Like the states that are big, like we tend to have like a pretty good presence. There's not very many DMAs that we haven't dipped our toe into, but there's still plenty of room for growth from here as well.
For sure. Talk about the management team that you've assembled, Jeremy. I know that you brought on a new president, Rhett Langford. What's he being brought on to do, and how do you think about the management team that you have and the task at hand?
One of the larger growth initiatives I mentioned was really, how do we take those best-in-class services that we're doing for our own clinics and offer them up to our franchisees?
Yep.
And in healthcare, really that's just an MSO model, which is a management services organization or a medical services organization. Rhett joins us from Napa, which was a big anesthesia managed services organization. And we wanted to formally set up an MSO to provide these type of services to our franchise owners. So he's been with the business about 2 months and is really here to help drive those healthcare services into our franchise owners and help set new franchisees that open up for success with things like that revenue cycle management, things like digital marketing, things like payer collection, things like provider recruiting and compliance to really assist the franchisees. The ethos that we have with our franchise owners is we want them to hire great teams, be focused on patient care and making a great patient experience. All the back office pieces, we want to make that as easy as possible for them to do. And we think that we can provide a best-in-class service for them on those things. So Rhett is managing and overseeing that initiative for us. Away from the specifics of Rhett, we've brought in a lot of consumer retail folks. We have our head of marketing is coming from consumer retail. Our head of technology, Adam Landry, is coming from consumer retail. We've also brought in great expertise on things like compliance and revenue cycle management, where we brought folks in from larger hospital systems, places like HCA. We brought in procurement folks from places like Village MD. So we're taking this best of approach on let's get the best consumer minds that we have out there and let's get the best healthcare talent we can have, because we're really doing both at AFC, and it takes both to make us successful.
Yeah. I always feel like if you get like a dozen great people, you could take over the world. You know what I'm saying?
You sure
like,
can. You sure can. It makes it a lot of fun, too.
Given their national presence, I figured that AFC must get a ton of insight into shifting healthcare trends. And so I asked Jeremy what's changed in terms of patient expectations or perceptions when it comes to urgent care and how that's impacting their business.
Well, I think when urgent care was first starting, which is, only been a couple dozen years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of exploded in the past 10. It was largely started by emergency room physicians that were looking for ways to kind of relieve the pressure off of the ER. And I think today, certainly that's a part of the business, but what's really become more of the pinch point is there's not enough primary care providers out there, and it's very difficult to get a primary care appointment, particularly for some of the simpler things that are out there.
Yeah.
Over a third of the U.S. does not have a primary care provider at all, and they are showing up at places like AFC to both take care of urgent needs, but it's also, one of the few times that they're getting eyes on them from a nurse practitioner or a doctor to say, hey, what's going on, more broadly with their health. So like everything in the world, consumers aren't as patient as they used to be, no pun intended. They want convenience. They want it fast. They want it easy. They want it right now, but they still want high quality. And AFC is really bridging what I think is a pretty big hole in the marketplace where emergency rooms are...
It's like the worst experience you could ever have, right?
Thank goodness they're there when you need them, but you certainly don't want to go there for a sprained ankle unless you really have to.
Totally.
Conversely, I have younger kids. If your kid has pink eye, you don't want to wait 4 days to get into your primary care provider. You just need to get the antibiotics so you can get them back into school and get on with your life. And if you're somebody that is, maybe a young adult that doesn't have a primary care physician, you need a place that is able to, check in on you and make sure that you're reasonably healthy, you're getting your flu vaccines, you are getting a physical every now and then. And so we're able to provide all of those things. I do think, long-winded way probably of saying, we've gone from the emergency of a moment and that being the core focus to really getting into some of the primary care type services that the primary care industry has had a hard time handling the demand that's out there. And we're taking that on a lot more proactively.
You mentioned kind of marketing and operational excellence, technologies at the intersection of all that stuff. And obviously, everyone is talking about AI. We're here in July of 2026. Talk about how AI is transforming healthcare and how you all specifically are thinking about its adoption in terms of making the customer experience better, operations better, getting the word out, things of that nature.
It is in the top 2 or 3 things of everything we focus on. We're trying to be AI forward as we think about what the future of AFC can be. So every single one of my departments, not just technology or operations, there is a core focus on how do we make sure we are leveraging AI to be best in class of what we're doing. So some examples on how that's showing up. We have overhauled our phone systems at all of the clinics. We have in the marketing department, we're leveraging it for SEO and digital advertising buying and our CRM and how to reach customers in a specific way. In the revenue cycle space, which is, where we're collecting money from insurance companies, helping them to review our claims, get them packaged up and sent to insurance companies. We use it for compliance efforts to give oversight into our clinics and make sure our physicians are reviewing their charts and closing their charts in appropriate ways and are following the standing orders that the physicians have set up that they expect nurses to do with patients when they show up with specific conditions. We are using it to be really smart about how we look at our P&Ls and labor schedules on the operations team. There's hardly a part of the business that it can't help hyper-accelerate being able to do things more quickly. And we've done a lot of teaching our teams how to fish on this. But part of the underlying first step really is getting just a common set of data, the data going into one place with common definitions so that whether I am asking our AI instance or a front desk person at a clinic is asking the same question, that it will spit out the same type of answer and not hallucinate itself into an answer. And so we've spent a lot of time and energy getting our infrastructure correct as well. But look, we're big believers that you got to be the head of the curve on this. Healthcare industry broadly is obviously super attuned to the potentials of AI, but don't necessarily win any awards for being fast technology adopters out there. And we think of ourselves as more of a consumer company, which tends to be a little bit quicker on the adoption curve on these things. And I think it's something that's going to be a strategic weapon for us over time.
Well, most individual franchisees, they don't have the perspective to maybe know exactly the direction to go with AI and technology. And that's really what you're there for, to help them succeed. Which leads to my next question. When you're talking to potential franchisees and you feel they have the same values and they're hardworking people, what's your, I don't want to say pitch, but how do you talk to them in terms of AFC and what makes it a really attractive opportunity for them today?
Well, it's an excellent business model, first of all. So, we've got a long track record of success across really all kinds of geographies, whether it's a rural community, a middle market, a heavy urban spot. There's a need for urgent care services. AFC has been there and has a successful track record of working, which is a pretty exciting thing. It's an intimidating thing to set up your own health clinic. So we have the playbooks. We know how to pick the real estate. We know how to get you contracts with the insurance companies. We know how to make sure that you're setting your business up to be compliant with all the regulatory concerns. And we know how to market the services and get you up and going. So, like a lot of franchising, the whole idea is to be a program in a box that helps de-risk things. What we need franchise owners to do is to be the face of AFC in their community, to hire fantastic people, to take care of their teams, to take care of their patients, to set the tone on, what a great patient experience is going to look like, and to really trust the process and follow the playbooks that we have put in place on the 40 years experience we have with 400 to 500 clinics on doing all these more specific revenue cycle collection, digital marketing, et cetera. We've got them on those type of things. And I think that, look, there's a lot of potential franchise owners out there that are looking for a very mission-driven, how do I take care of people type of thing. That's the kind of person we're looking for. They need to be well-capitalized. They got to be willing to work hard. This is not an absentee owner situation, but they don't need to be a medical doctor to run a great clinic. They need to partner with great physician partners on things for sure. But a lot of the work is just building great teams and taking care of their patients, which is no easy task. Requires a great local touch and the right kind of person.
Yeah, I would imagine that most franchisees come to you and everyone sizes each other up and they're thinking, what's the risk here? But you said two things that I think are worth repeating. 40 years in business. And I was surprised when you said how kind of dispersed the clinics are in every state. One of the killers in retail, as you know, is if you don't have portability of the concept. You've got proven portability in several states, and that's very important and very compelling for franchisees.
You're exactly, and look, at the end of the day, and not that we're rooting for this, but everybody gets sick at some point. People get hurt, everybody gets sick. I spent part of my career in restaurants. I spent part of my career in beauty services where things can be more regional or consumers can be a little bit more fickle. The flu is not going away. Kids are going to sprain their ankle in their soccer games. People are going to get pink eye, or people are going to need help with various health needs. That is a pretty universal experience. And when people are sick, they want someone they can rely on that can help take care of them quickly. And that's where AFC fits in. So I think that is why this business model works so well in a rural community all the way through, the streets of Manhattan on things. And, it gets to the opportunity that we have ahead of us, and why I kind of say the world deserves more of what we have to offer, because in many cases, the alternatives that patients have to consider are really less than ideal from their perspective.
Yeah, it's really compelling the more you think about it. How about as you grow, you're obviously, every company wants to be a growth company. And I always say, not just for growth's sake, you want to create opportunity for people and franchisees and people to move up the ladder and everything. How do you maintain the consistency and quality of the brand and patient trust? This isn't selling hamburgers. As you expand across the country and get new franchisees, how do you control the brand and everything that goes along with it? Because that seems like a really big job.
The combination of picking the right franchise owners and the relationship with the franchise owners and us as the franchisor is just mission critical. And it's something that I, for better or worse, spent a lot of my career on. I spent a lot of time in personal services brands like Dry Bar, Elements Massage, where, look, there's a lot of places to get your hair done. There's a lot of places to get a massage. Brand consistency really does boil down. Of course, you're going to set the standards and have an operating manual and have the right training, But you need a group of people that are bought into the process and importance of having that consistent experience along the way. And AFC's done a great job of bringing franchise owners in that are bought into that part of the mission. We cannot be all things to all people. There is, we're not doing surgery in our AFC clinics, but the things that we do, we need to be best in class on, and having that shared commitment with our franchise owners part of it. Of course, we have a big team of people that travel around the country and visit clinics and work with franchise owners. We have regional events and annual conferences. We have ongoing virtual training and owner engagement events to make sure that's all happening. You don't just set it and forget it. That's an ongoing forever process. And the bigger you get, in some ways, the harder that can be. The flip side, the bigger you get, the more that people can kind of see the benefit of what that consistency has brought. So if you pick the right people to be franchise owners on the upfront, they tend to be bought into what we're doing on day one.
Yeah. We talked about kind of same location sales, same store sales. There's probably a lot of different services you can provide to the community in any given store. Talked about expansion. How about M&A? Is this like a very fragmented industry where that's an opportunity either now or down the road?
It is a fragmented industry. So there's about 15,000 urgent cares across the U.S. I mentioned before, we're the biggest brand out there. We got about 2.5% market share. And we are seeing some M&A opportunities out there. In particular, we've partnered really closely with a number of franchise owners to buy out local urgent care owners and bring those into the AFC brand. We've had success on that in Boston and New York. We've done that in Texas and in Denver, where a local physician owner of 2 or 3 clinics is looking to retire or exit the market, and a local AFC owner is well positioned to step in and put in our processes, put in our systems and tools, obviously put up our branding and our signage, and that has worked extremely well, and it's a big part of our strategy for growth.
Feels like you're kind of redefining how care could be delivered over time, preventative and otherwise. There's so much opportunity, Jeremy, and I always feel like a management team can only do 2 or 3 things every year really well. Like when you look at the next 18 months, like end of 26 into 27, what are the few things that you're really pumped up about and what you and the team are focused on?
Yeah, so, first and foremost, with Rhett coming on board, bringing our MSO services to the market with our franchise owners, but we're also bringing those to market to non-AFC clinics. It's a way for us to get to know them, get to start working together. We think that we really got something to add on the back office services, particularly with revenue cycle management. As you can probably imagine, it is not an easy task to get Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare to pay the claims for folks that have come in. It requires the right kind of documentation, the right kind of claim submission. The role of AI is very important. I am here to tell you that all those big insurance companies are using AI to find reasons to deny claims and pay physician practices less. And so the tools that we can bring to bear as a larger scale player relative to what a smaller urgent care or an individual franchisee can do on their own is really game changing for the financial profile for those businesses, which then in turns enable them to invest in their team, invest in more AFC urgent care. So getting the MSO platform rolled out to our franchise owners is really top priority for AFC over the next year. We're also planting a number of seeds on various new services from an innovation standpoint, starting with how do we do more of what we're already good at? This gets to one of the great things in a franchise system. I have franchisees who have been massively successful with things like occupational medicine, employer services. I have others that have built fantastic businesses around local partnerships on sports physicals and other things. How do I get that best of just across? And then how do I bring on some new services? There's the consumer, the patients out there, the consumer experience is really, there's a lot of pretty cool telehealth companies that are bringing Medicine 3.0 services to market. Patients are taking a more proactive view on their health, whether that be with supplements or certainly with GLP-1s or hormone replacement therapy. They're also just looking for help on things like basic prescription management, whether that be things like their cholesterol medicine or high blood pressure medicine, sexual health medicines, birth control, et cetera. We think we can play a really strong role in those things. And we're just kind of at the tip of the spear on figuring out how do we take AFC to the next level and the things that patients are candidly asking us to do for them. And we don't necessarily do all of those things today.
That was Jeremy Morgan, CEO of American Family Care, the nation's leading provider of urgent care with 400-plus walk-in clinics around the U.S., treating over 4 million patients annually. Jeremy and his team are extending the business well beyond episodic care and leveraging data and technology to anticipate patient needs. While this story is certainly about footprint growth and revenues, it's also about redefining how healthcare is delivered in a system that increasingly values prevention, convenience, and choice. I'm Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.